My name is Arikana Chihombori. I was born in Zimbabwe, some little village called Chivu. Came to this country to go to college, on the first degree in general chemistry and a master's in organic chemistry, went on to medical school, then did a residency in general surgery and family medicine, practiced medicine for 25 years until one night. Around 3 a.m., a phone call comes in and says, Doc, the African Union ambassador to the United States has resigned. She was going to be running for president of her country, and that we would want you to be the next African Union ambassador to the United States. Now keep in mind, I am a scientist through and through. So who in their right mind would want me to become an ambassador in Washington? I thought that was a joke and it was laughable. Well, I fought it for about 6 months, but because being an African, after a while I had to listen to my elders. So I figured, okay, if you think you're putting a joke on me, the joke is on you, because I'm going to only go to Washington for 6 months and then I'll come back. And I'll tell my elders that I tried, but I couldn't do it. But something happened during the first 4 to 5 months. And mind you, I'm staying in a hotel because I knew I wasn't going to get into a contract, renting or buying, that I wasn't going to last. But what was very disturbing was the disrespect that was so blatant. I would be sitting in meetings initially, because as a doctor, you're always a doctor no matter where you are. And I thought it was really quite humorous sitting with all these big diplomats, and here I am, a medical doctor, and I'm supposed to be useful. I'm busy diagnosing them, you got a thyroid condition, you are bipolar, and I got a pill for you. I'm not really paying attention to the deliberations, because I don't think politicians accomplish much anyway. So it was more important to diagnose them, their medical conditions. But every now and then somebody will say something and I'm like, wait just a minute, did they just say that? And one particular event, there was a whole team of African ministers, and one particular leader of a particular department in Washington started raising their voice and screaming and yelling at them. You Africans, you will never speak with one voice. This document over here is going to be a piece of paper 20 years from now. I said, okay. So we got all the ministers here. Somebody say something. It wasn't my show. I was like third. You know how you sit, you got your team leader, and then according to rank, I was number 3. So clearly I wasn't supposed to speak. I waited for those who were supposed to speak. They did not. More and more of those situations became apparent to me. And I remember 5 months into my stay in Washington, I called home and I said, well, you know what, guys, I'm going to hang around a little bit longer. There were a few, that needed a good kicking. And that I was going to hang around until they ran me out of Dodge, and that's exactly what happened. The disrespect is not just for the Africans on the continent. The disrespect is for black people around the world. The abuse is not just for Africans on the continent. The abuse is for black people wherever you find us. I'm going to share with you some basic facts. You see, our story is a simple one. Our story is of truth and facts, which are 2 constants that do not change. And all we need to do is give the world an overdose of our truth and insist on it. As we speak today, I'm going to take you back centuries, long before the children of Africa were taken out of Africa as slaves. There was some serious resistance when the occupiers from the West came to Africa, contrary to what some might think. They didn't just give up their children, but the fighting began long before slavery. And the resistance was those who led them, the majority of them, their heads, as we speak today, are sitting in jars in Europe. Are you aware of that? Our leaders, our ancestors who fought the wars of resistance, their heads, their remains are sitting in jars throughout Europe. And the same people have the audacity to come to Africa and talk to us about human rights. But what's even more disturbing is that we entertain them and we don't remind them of these skeletons in their closet. As we speak today, the priceless artifacts that they stole from all over Africa are sitting in their museums throughout Europe. And when you and I, when we visit Europe, we pay to see what belongs to us. Evidence of theft, evidence of murder on display in plain sight. As we speak today, black people are listed as 3/5 of a human being in the US Constitution. As we speak today, the redlining continues. As we speak today, African countries are being made to pay ridiculous interest rates on loans that they should not be paying for. Correct. As we speak today, reparations are due. Everybody else has been given reparations, expect us. The question then becomes, what is wrong with this picture? Why aren't you and I standing up and demanding that what is right must be done? I can tell you why. Because no other race would stand for a minute what is being done to us. How long do you think a finger of a British soldier lasts in Zimbabwe? How long do you think a thumb of a German soldier lasts in Namibia? Not even a minute. They would storm in, kill hundreds, if not thousands of people just to recover that one finger. Why is it that we are unable to come together and speak our truth and demand that what needs to be done must be done? It's because they defeated us where it matters the most, which is the mind. It started with the missionaries in Africa long before slavery. They were sent by the Roman Catholic Church to subdue the Africans, make them believe that when you get slapped, turn the other cheek, and that your riches are in heaven. So by the time they followed with the colonizers to reap and rape Africa, we were already brainwashed. We were meant to believe everything African was bad and undesirable, and everything European was better. And the same brainwashing continued as our children were taken out of Africa enslaved. It continued on the plantations, color gradations, light-skinned versus dark-skinned, field workers versus kitchen workers. To this day, we suffer from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. For how long are we going to continue to suffer from this affliction? For it is singularly the reason why we are not able to come together just like other races and nationalities have done in this melting pot that is the United States of America. When you ask for the voices of the Irish Americans loud and clear, Jewish Americans loud and clear, German Americans, Italian Americans, Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, their voices are loud and clear. But when you ask for the voices of us black people, you might as well go to the graveyard, because we are missing in action. We were taught, we were brainwashed into not even loving ourselves as individuals, let alone each other. We were taught not to trust one another. We were taught not to believe that my brother can, my sister can, but somebody else who doesn't look like you and I is better. The question I have for all of you, just close your eyes and think about your children, your grandchildren. Is this the world you want to leave behind for them? If the answer is no, then you need to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. Because it is the image in the mirror that must change. It is the image in the mirror that must understand that you are sick from this affliction of the legacy of slavery. You are not sick at home. You are not sick in the doctor's waiting room. You are not sick in the hospital ward. You are sick in the intensive care. How long are we going to continue to support other people's agendas? Those who stood up to fight during the civil rights movement, during the Pan-African days in Africa, civil rights in the United States, they were all silenced. We are emerging out of a period of 20 to 30 years where just nothing is going on. We are all fast asleep. When are we going to wake up? Reverend Al Sharpton is saying, the time to wake up is now. Reparations now. We know all the companies that benefited from slavery. We have their name. We have the list. They must pay. As we speak, many have pledged their contributions. Guess what's going to happen, my brothers and sisters? Because we are not organized, we will never realize those funds. And they will hide behind, oh, they are disorganized. They don't know what they are doing. I am now going to be asking Reverend Al Sharpton to lead us as we demand those reparations. We need to register a global Pan-African fund that can make sure that we have development in black communities where it belongs. Those funds must be organized. Those funds must be paid for. Reparations for black people now. No more shall we continue to be abused. No more shall they continue to exploit our Africa. What is in Africa is our birthright, and we are going home to take it. No more shall we be told Africa is a diseased and dying continent because they are going to Africa in droves and telling you to not go there. So this moment is calling for unity of purpose. And before I leave this platform, I'm going to ask all of you to take a moment. If you love your children, if you love your grandchildren and their future, to have a serious conversation with image in the mirror. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. I thank you.
king, go. I think I'm a king, go.
Why is it that we get coffee and tea from Switzerland? Have you seen the large coffee fields in Switzerland? A good portion of that is coming from our beloved continent. Why are these countries allowed to get away with relabeling African products as their own? It's all by design.
I'm a king, go. Yes, I'm a king, go. I think I'm a king, go.
Once upon a time, our beloved continent was the center of the earth, was the center of the world. Once upon a time, our beloved continent was this beautiful tree of life that gave life not only to humanity, but to life in general as we know it. Invaders came to our beloved continent centuries ago, and they started messing with this tree of life that is Africa. We must understand the tree that was, the tree that gave life to the world. We need to understand what has been done to this tree to take it to where we have the Africa that is no longer the center of the world. When we understand what has been done to Africa, it makes it easier for us to strategize on how we can undo the damage, the destruction that has befallen our motherland, the African tree of life. I think it's clear that we understand for this tree to have issues. The issues are either issues above the ground, which is what they have mostly wanted us to focus on, versus issues below the ground, which are really the pivotal issues, the issues that they strategized to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. Allow me to classify the issues, the reasons why this tree of life that is Africa is ailing. And I'm going to divide the issues between the two. Problems that are causing this tree to ail, but problems above the root, above the ground. And issues that are making this tree ail that are below the ground, issues of the root. Quite often, we are focusing on the issues above the root, issues above the ground. Issues like the leaves and the flowers and the fruits and the branches that are falling off one season after another. Those issues like leadership, issues like corruption, issues like poor access to healthcare, poor education, poor infrastructure. Those are all issues above the ground. They come and they go. We change leaders every day in Africa. But tell me one African country that changed a leader and things changed. We might see some improvement, but fundamentally, nothing changes. This was all by design. Where we are lacking in our understanding of our Africa is the issues below the ground, the issues of the root, the issues that were predetermined by those who came to colonize Africa, those who came to settle in our beloved continent. Remember, when they came to Africa, the settlers, they found an amazing continent with everything and anything the world could ever need, well-established religious and educational systems. And they wondered, how on earth can we ever conquer such an amazing continent unless we come up with a strategy that will see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. I repeat, unless they came with a strategy that would see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. To start with, when the colonizers came to Africa, we didn't have the issue of color. Black and white did not exist in our languages. We were Africans. The missionaries were sent in with specific instructions to make the Africans believe that everything African was bad and everything European was better and more desirable. They put in motion a process of making us dislike that which was ours and go all out to embrace what the new invader was bringing to our beloved continent. I have to give it to them. They did a very good job at doing that. They hit us where it hurt the most, the mind. The missionaries taught us about white angels. The missionaries taught us about the devil who was black. The missionaries are white, like the angels. And that when we go to church, we must worship the white angels. And definitely want nothing to do with the black devil who looks like us. Subliminal messaging. Subliminal messaging. That's where we began the self-hate, the mistrust of each other, the lack of appreciation, an idea that is coming from your brother, an idea that is coming from your sister, because we are taught to dislike anything to do with us. That, my brothers and sisters, was level one, number one level of destroying the African, the mind. Then they followed it with colonization, a systematic way of saying now that we have made the African believe that everything African was bad and everything European was better. Let's take it to the next level. So it is that they met in Berlin and decided to chop up our country, our continent rather. So it is they met in Berlin, Germany, at the invitation of the then Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck, specifically to come up with a strategy that once again would see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. They spent 4 months, 4 cold months in Berlin, Germany, from November of 1884 to February of 1885. And by the time they were done, our Africa had been chopped up into the tiny little countries that we see today. Countries that were intentionally divided in such a way that individually they will never survive. That individually they are easy to exploit. The whole purpose was to see to it that they can continue to exploit the rich natural resources that we were endowed with in our beloved continent. A united Africa is an Africa that is difficult to exploit. An Africa that speaks with one voice is an Africa that is difficult to exploit. So it is what they came up with, their strategy of 1884 during the Berlin Conference, is what gave us the Africa that we have today. An Africa that has countries like Benin, countries like Togo, countries like Central African Republic, Niger. As a matter of fact, all African countries. Then they turned around and said, okay, here we are. You are independent countries. Of course, during the Berlin Conference and during colonization, every one of those countries was controlled from those capitals in Europe until independence, when our Pan-African fathers began to say there's something wrong with this picture. We can no longer continue to be subservient in our own continent. So they began to push back. And this is what led us to get the fake independence, where we were given political liberation, limited political liberation to this day. But what they kept and never let go, which brings me to issue number 3 of the root, was the economic liberation. You see, you got to understand that when we were under colonization, the companies that ran the economies of all African countries were companies that belonged to the colonizer. If a country was colonized by the British, the majority of the companies that controlled the economies of those countries were British. If you were colonized by the Germans, German companies. If you were colonized by the French, French companies, and so forth. That, my brothers and sisters, they never gave up. They still continue to control the economies of their former colonies to this day. Let's go back and summarize where we are so far. The issues of the root. They messed with our mind. Berlin Conference. They divided us up, chopped up into tiny little economies that simply cannot survive on their own. And thirdly, in the name of giving us liberation, they never actually left our beloved continent. Economic liberation was denied the Africans to this day. If you go into any African country today, the majority of the employers are multinational companies from those colonies, former colonies, who never left at independence in the 1950s to 60s. The colonizers have never left Africa. Issue number 3 of the root. In the 1940s, they created the Bretton Woods institutions. The Bretton Woods institutions were created with the fair understanding that their success was based on the failures of the developing countries, the majority being in Africa. So it is the international monetary policies are skewed in such a way that African countries are forever going to be paying debt they will never finish paying off. The average African country, as we speak today, spends about 1/3 of their GDP on loan repayment. How can a country survive? It's all by design. Countries that have never defaulted on their loan repayment, and yet the rating agencies continue to give them poor ratings so that they can justify giving them high interest loans. We must understand the international finance system and how it is keeping their knees on the necks of the African countries. The international finance system must be analyzed, and we're asking those involved to give Africans a break, and that we must treat Africa fairly. We must demand that. Issue number 4 of the root. The international trade policies. You see, the continent still has 80% of its natural resources. Africa is the continent where the rest of the world is going to for their needs. Gold, check. Diamonds, check. Oil, check. Coltan, check. Copper, check. The list goes on. It's all in our beloved Africa. And the world wants it. The world wants our natural resources. Here is the problem. Going back to the Berlin Conference, the international trade policies make it very difficult for African countries to add value to our natural resources. Hence, as we speak today, the majority of the natural resources coming out of Africa leave Africa without value addition. Have you ever wondered, why is it that over 65% of the world cocoa beans come from West Africa, and yet it's only recently, past couple of years, that we started seeing a few factories manufacturing chocolates? It was all by design, thanks to the unfair trade policies. Have you ever wondered, why is it that we get coffee and tea from Switzerland? Have you seen the large coffee fields in Switzerland? A good portion of that is coming from our beloved continent, East Africa. Why are we not questioning the large quantities of coffee and tea coming out of certain countries when they are not growing that much coffee, when they are not growing that much tea in their countries? Why are these countries allowed to get away with relabeling African products as their own? It's all by design. The world trade policies that give a blind eye to atrocities that are being committed on our beloved continent. That's issue number 5 of the root. We must understand the international trade policies and how they're keeping Africans from creating the much needed jobs in our beloved continent. You take, for example, coltan alone. If we were to say every item, every microchip that requires coltan must be manufactured in Africa, that means that microchip in your cell phone, in your laptop, in our electric cars, the list goes on. That alone could create millions of jobs for the Africans, so we can no longer talk about unemployment for our youth. That alone. Have you ever wondered, if we were to say everything that requires chocolate must be manufactured in Africa, do you know how many jobs we could create? Those who are manufacturing chocolates outside Africa, all they're adding is water and milk. Do people even know that? Does the world even know that? Cities are built out of African cocoa beans. Does the world know that? Why is that being allowed? It's the unfair trade policies. I could go on and on and on about the natural resources out of Africa that are creating jobs for the rest of the world. That has got to change. And we African diaspora must understand it, appreciate it, and do something about it. Issue number 6. See, we all talk about, we want change in Africa. We want better health care. We want better education. We want better infrastructure. Well, guess what? No amount of money put into Africa will give us the health care we desire. Why? It's because the majority of the healthcare workers are outside Africa. Like I often say, there are more Ghanaian doctors in New York City than in Ghana, the country. There are more Nigerian doctors in Los Angeles than in the country of Nigeria. How then do you improve healthcare if there are no doctors? Let's be realistic, my brothers and sisters. This is a moment for you to stop and think. We can't expect quality healthcare to just happen out of nothing. We have to participate. The capacity that Africa needs to build the Africa that we want, to build a sustainable Africa, is in the diaspora. And that's you and I, my brother and sister. The brain drain that has occurred in Africa over the past 400 years must be reversed. There is no two ways about it. We have got to make a decision as the children of Africa in the diaspora. We must understand our Africa. We must understand the issues that are causing this tree of life that is Africa to be ailing to the extent that it is. The issues above the root and issues below the root of this tree. Allow me to summarize them, because it is important that we understand them. Because when we fully appreciate what is going on in Africa, we will stop being thrown a shiny object and run after the shiny object, while the real issues are in the opposite direction. 1, leadership. 2, corruption. 3, poor access to healthcare, poor educational systems, poor infrastructure. Those are issues above the ground. Those are the flowers and the fruits and the leaves and the branches. If they allow, or rather, if we allow ourselves to concentrate on issues above the ground and totally ignore the issues below the ground, which are, once again, the mind. By that I'm talking about the legacy of colonization and the legacy of slavery. The legacy that makes us believe we are inferior to others, and that what we do is inferior to what those from the Western worlds do. We must heal from the disease of the legacy of slavery and colonization. Our minds must wake up. Secondly, the Berlin Conference and what that meant when they divided Africa up into the 10 little economies. China cannot go into the same boxing ring with Benin. The United States cannot go into the same boxing ring with Central African Republic. It simply doesn't make sense. It was all by design. Then the colonizers, who never left our Africa, they continue to control the economies of all African countries to this day. And until the African has control of our own economies, nothing we want to do is going to give us the Africa that we need, the sustainable Africa that we want. We must own the factories that manufacture our fabrics. We must own the brick plant that's making the bricks that we need to build our houses. We must build our own planes. We must build our own airports. We must build and own the railway lines and the trains. Manufacturing is where it's at. We must own the fundamentals of our economies in Africa. Sadly, the multinationals that go back to colonization have never left our beloved Africa. Issue number 3. Issue number 4, the international finance policies that disadvantage developing countries, the majority of those countries being in Africa. The international trade policies that are so unfair to developing countries. And once again, the majority are in Africa. And as we speak today, Africa is where everybody is going. All other parts of the world are going for their needs. And last but not least, the brain drain. Here, my brothers and sisters, you should own this. If we don't come together and speak with one voice, if we don't come together and realistically look at the issues that are causing this African tree to ail, we have no one to blame but ourselves. And so now I have described the issues, the causes for this African tree of life to be in the intensive care. I can tell you the solutions are easy. Once we understand what is being done to our tree, once we understand why this tree of life is not giving us the sweet, juicy fruits like it used to once upon a time, what this moment is calling for, my brothers and sisters, is for unity. Unity among black people. Unity of purpose. If we do not unite as black people, we will continue to be the most disrespected race on earth. You know it. I don't have to overemphasize that. The question I have for you is, are you happy with the status of black people today on earth? Are you happy with the world the way it is today? Are you happy living this world the way it is for your children, grandchildren, and generations to come? I hope. The answer is no. 20 years from now, your children and grandchildren are going to ask you, grandfather, grandmother, there were issues with our beloved continent, Africa. There were problems with the race, our race, as black people. What did you do, grandmother? What did you do, grandpa? For you to be able to answer that question, that journey begins now. My hope is 20 years from now, you can say, granddaughter, grandson, sit down. These were the issues in our beloved Africa. These were the issues with black people. Together with my brothers and sisters, we came together. We pulled our financial resources together. And this is what we did. While the mission is not yet accomplished, this is where we left off. And this is where you, together with your brothers and sisters, need to come together and pick up where we left off. But we should also guarantee them 2 things. 1, they will always have our shoulders to stand on. And secondly, we will always have their back. The journey to be able to answer that question to our children and grandchildren begins today. It is important that we speak with one voice. The rule of divide and conquer has been winning among us for far too long. The issue of a divided Africa, the issue of a divided people of African descent around the globe is an issue that we and only we can address and take care of. Naturally, you don't expect those who set out to divide us to do something about it. Until we participate in the building of Africa, sustainable Africa is never going to be built. Those who sought out to exploit Africa, they built an Africa that worked for them. The Africa they built never worked for us. So we must build the Africa that we want. And once we unite, the next thing is financial resources. We are not poor people by any stretch of imagination. To women I say, look at how many clothes, handbags, dresses, shoes in your closet that still have tags on. Can you imagine if everybody committed to $83 a month and we get 1 million people out of the over 300 million in the diaspora, just 1 million to commit to $83 a month. That's $1 billion a year. Now let's make it 5 million people. Let's make it 5 years, 10 years to perpetuity. How do you think the Jews got to be as powerful as they are now after Holocaust? They came together. They understood that sheer survival was in their unity. Not only unity physically, but also financial unity. They pulled their funds together and they have built a strong, powerful Jewish community. We have examples all around us. Ask for the voices of the Chinese diaspora loud and clear. Ask for the voices of the Indian diaspora, the Irish diaspora, German Americans, Italian Americans, loud and clear. But when you ask for the voices of the African diaspora, you might as well go to the graveyard. We are missing in action. We are waiting for somebody to come take care of our problems because we've been programmed to think that way. Examples that we see every day. Somehow, we don't have the energy to say, we can do it too. We're suffering from the disease of the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. We are in the intensive care, my brothers and sisters. We have got to understand this. We have got to heal ourselves from this disease. Until we do, our ability to help ourselves is always going to be hindered. And that means we all must understand our history and the journey that we have been through. I feel very strongly that most of us, we're still in our slumber. We're still fast asleep. We continue to do some of the most stupid things as black people. You tell me why. I get ignored by my own son at the airport when I want my son to help me with my luggage. A young boy who could easily be my son or my grandson. Because they are waiting for the British Airways flight that just landed. White people tip better. They're waiting to wait on the British people that are coming from London, and they ignore me. You tell me why. I'm ignored at a restaurant because of the color of my skin, by one who looks like my own daughter, by one who looks like my own son. Tell me why. I have a better chance of getting a contract in Africa if I have a white man as my partner, if I have a white man sitting next to me when I go for an interview. How insane is that? Tell me why. A black man will go out of business in a black neighborhood the minute a Chinaman comes in. Because we black people will start patronizing the Chinaman. We'll turn it around. Have a black man go to Chinatown. First of all, you're lucky to get a license to start a shop in Chinatown. But any luck should you open a shop in Chinatown, 0 Chinese will patronize you. We know all those facts. Why is it that we can't behave like others do? Unity of purpose. My brothers and sisters, may I remind you that we're part of somebody else's strategy. Strategy designed to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. Let us be the generation. Let's make a commitment that we are going to be the generation that's going to end this scourge. We are going to be the generation that's going to teach our children that we have been lied to. But we're not going to accept those lies anymore. Let's speak nothing but the truth to our children. We owe it to them. Let's teach our children our history. We got this. We can do this. 2 things we gotta do. Unite and bring our financial resources together. All of it will work if we can heal ourselves of the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. Once our minds are awoken, once we understand our history, once we understand the journey that we have been put through, the rest is easy. We can do this. We can do this. The beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and total indestructible Africans, we can do this. Without a doubt, we got this. And we owe it to our children, grandchildren, and generations to come. I thank you.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king. I think I'm a king.
How do you put China in the same boxing ring with Eswatini? Eswatini has 1.2 million people. China has 1.4 billion people. And you put them on the same stage and say, go at it, negotiate. Are you with me? Yes. This is insanity of the highest order. How have we allowed this carnage to go on? When Eswatini is thrown in the same boxing ring with China and Eswatini collapses before Eswatini even gets on the stage, the world says, well, Eswatini, what's wrong with you? Why can't you take care of your people? Well, China came in and said, Eswatini, give me all your gold or else. And if Eswatini does not agree, they just go on next door to Lesotho and give Lesotho an extra $1. And if Lesotho doesn't take it, they just jump on to Togo, Central African Republic. It was all by design. 1884. They did something else in addition to chopping us up. They also set out to make the African believe that everything African was bad and undesirable, and everything Western, particularly French and British, was more desirable. We call that the legacy of colonization. Prior to that, they had started long working on the slaves. Make them think everything about them, forget anything about Africa. Where you come from is a horrible place, diseased and dying people, constantly at war with themselves, uncivilized. Cut out any communications with them. You need to just know what we tell you. And we call that the legacy of slavery. So that's where you look at where we are today. 135 years later, a system that was put in place to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated, that Africa is forever exploited, remains in place today, alive and well. And we sit here and we ask ourselves, why isn't Africa moving forward? Why does Africa continue to be taken advantage of? Well, I'll tell you why, very simply. Until Africa comes together as a continent speaking with one voice, one continent, one people, nothing, and I repeat, nothing is gonna change. As individual little African countries, we are wannabe boxers. We will never make it fighting against the heavyweights. We must speak with one voice. Yeah. And this is exactly what our Pan-African leaders wanted to see happen in 1963 when they came together in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. They clearly stated that Africa for the Africans at home and abroad, and that African Union was now. They said Africa must speak with one voice. It is the only way for Africa to take its rightful place on the world stage. Sadly, when they went to Addis Ababa in 1963, they were divided. We had two factions, the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group. The Casablanca group were saying Africa for the Africans at home and abroad, and African Union now. This was Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. Only 7. The other 25 of the 32 who attended were the Monrovia group. They were the nationalists. They said, let's go slow. Let's kind of wait on this Pan-African thing. 55 years later, 56 this year, we're still going slow. As if it wasn't bad enough that we were divided up into the tiny little countries that we are today. The gift that Berlin Conference gave us. One other thing that France did between 1958 and 1961 in the name of giving us our independence as African countries. France forced the Francophone, and I hate that terminology. There is no such thing as Francophone, Anglophone. They made it up. But for the purposes of communication, I will use that. 14 of those countries, they said, in order for you to get your independence from us, you must sign this document. You thought they could have found a better name for the document. The document was called the Pact for the Continuation. I repeat, the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. We are talking about giving you independence, but sign this pact for the continuation of colonization in a different format. And I'm going to highlight some of those issues that they said you must agree to if you are going to be independent. Hello. Maybe we need to redefine the meaning of independence for the French. First, France said, you see, you monkeys, you don't know how to manage your money. We're going to demand that you deposit 85% of your bank reserves with the French Minister of Finance. Under the French Central Bank, under the control of the French Minister of Finance. France is then going to take your 85% bank deposits from each and every one of you. Deposit those funds in the French stock market under the French name. And you may or may not know the returns. Today, as we speak, the latest figures are saying for every 14 billion that France invests in the stock market from Africa, they are realizing upwards of 300 billion in return. Every year in, year out, because of these deposits from the African countries, France is taking out of Africa over $500 billion. Now figure it out. For every 14 billion, the returns on the investment are over 300 billion, and they are taking over 500 billion. So in actuality, France is taking out of Africa trillions of dollars year in and year out. From us poor people, Africans. Back to the pact. So should you want to access some of your money that you have deposited with France, you have to submit your country's financial returns. And if approved, you get to get it as a loan. You can only access up to 20% of your money year in, year out as a loan at commercial interest rates. Your own money. As if that was not enough. They said all your minerals discovered, yet to be discovered, all your oil discovered, yet to be discovered. France and French companies have the first right of refusal. If there's anything left over that the French companies do not want, your people might have. To this day. They said you will only use a currency that we created for you because you're special Africans. We call it the CFA. There was the Central African CFA and the Western African CFA, same animal. And that France is the only one that can print it for you. 1958. Fast forward. They're still printing it for us. And if you start misbehaving, they just stop printing your money. And your country's in trouble. They also said your language of instruction shall be French, whether you like it or not. that France will have military presence in your country, that your military can only be trained by France, that you can only buy military equipment from France, that you cannot have any military alliance with your neighbor, and that in the event of war, your allegiance is only to France. And furthermore, because they have military presence in your country, they can invade you without notice should they feel that the interests of France in your country are being violated.
Teach, sister, teach. Speak on, sister.
Fast forward, 2019, nothing has changed. The same people who have the audacity to tell us that we are poor countries, they are taking trillions out of Africa every year. And then one might say, why is it that African leaders haven't done anything about this deplorable situation? Well, let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, they have tried. Documented to this day, 22 coups where leaders were assassinated. France had something to do with it. The first 7, when they decided they were pulling out of the CFA and that they're going to print their own money, they were assassinated. Every time an African leader has tried to do what's best for their country, they were assassinated. Majority of them aided by France. It's a known fact. And then others, they were just mercenaries who felt that when there was a natural resource discovered in one country, they wanted to create a coup. So while the country is thrown into a civil war, they're siphoning the natural resource. We know of one particular story that had we not known about it, it would have been, oh, there we go again, the Africans. In about 25 years ago, a group of young, rich white kids were having fun in Cape Town. They found out that there was oil in Equatorial Guinea that had just been discovered, and they wanted it. So they set out a plan to have a coup in Equatorial Guinea. So while the Guineans are busy fighting a civil war, they will be siphoning the oil. But they made one mistake. There were 2 planes. One was to leave South Africa, stop in Zimbabwe, pick up more ammunition on their way to hunt in Equatorial Guinea. Another plane was taking off in the Caribbean that had this puppet diaspora who was supposed to be the next president. Mugabe wondered why such young people needed such powerful ammunition to go hunt in Equatorial Guinea. In doing his research further, he found out that this was a coup in the making. He allowed them to land in Zimbabwe. They loaded their plane, and just before takeoff, they were all arrested. The ringleader of that group was none other than the son of the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher. She had to fly to Zimbabwe and paid handsomely to get her son out. The last one of those prisoners left Zimbabwe about 6-7 years ago. Had these young people succeeded, it would have been another coup. There you go, the Africans again. Such, my brothers and sisters, is the story of your Africa. They don't do coups anymore. They simply create instability. So when you hear of an instability in an African country, ask yourself, what is really going on? Because what they are telling you is really going on is just a shiny object. The real issue is over here. And you need to stop before you start being used as an instrument of your own self-destruction.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I think I'm a king, I'm a king, yes.
The world at large, they know that Africa's future is in the hands of our youth. So New Africa Foundation specifically requested us to come and address African youth, starting with the youth in Ghana. And from what I'm hearing, the youth had actually come from all over Africa, and some came from outside Africa, specifically to hear the message of empowerment, the message about our future, the message about the miseducation of not only our youth, but us as Africans. The message about empowering our children and letting them know that now it is the time for us to do what we must do to take our Africa back. For far too long, we have been lied to. For far too long, we have been miseducated. And so as elders, those of the ones who are sitting with me today, and many others, we understand that we have failed our youth. But we do have a responsibility to make it right. And we do know that with our little wisdom and the energy and the intelligence of our youth, together, we can take our Africa in a new direction. That is what we came here to do. And that is what New Africa Foundation has asked us to do. We do know that our leaders cannot lead us on their own. They need all of us. So the message that we were going to deliver to our youth today was the message of hope, the message of resilience, and the message that says the Africa we want can only be built by us for us. And for us to succeed at doing so, we must be united. That the African youth are Africa's future. Without them, there is no future for Africa. And as elders, we have a responsibility to share with them the truth and nothing but the truth. That is the message that we came here to deliver. That is what New Africa Foundation had requested us to do. We may not be at the convention center, but we intend to continue to preach the gospel of truth until we reach the promised land. I have no doubt in my mind that we will get there. Because Africa, the Africans, the people I like to describe as the beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible human beings, the mothers and fathers of humanity, we will get to the promised land. Woo! And that's why we're here. Our issues as Africans today are issues of the mind. The most dangerous African of today is an African who is colonized, educated or not. Coming from Zimbabwe, I can honestly tell you that the people who are moving Zimbabwe in terms of the awakening are the villagers. They seem to have a better understanding of what is really going on and are less likely to be sold, are less likely to sell their souls. And you must look at the people around you. Some of the most difficult people, I was called by the Africa group at the World Bank one time to address them for their annual event. And I went through all the issues and the pillars of why Africa is where Africa is, and I analyzed the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization that the 14 African former French colonies were made to sign. I thought everybody understood. But at the end of it, 2 African-born economists working for the World Bank come to me and said, "But Ambassador, why do you keep talking about the Berlin Conference? It's a thing of the past." And to my utter shock, I'd gone through the process of explaining the Berlin Conference and that it is a policy that was put in place in order to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. And that as long as we have a country called Togo, as long as we have a country called Burkina Faso, as long as we have a country called Malawi, we are defeated. Intentionally so. So these 2 economists working for the World Bank are the same ones now that are being used as instruments of our own self-destruction. They're the ones that are being sent to Africa to sell policies that are detrimental to Africa's progress. So the question then becomes, what is our education doing for us? And it goes back to the miseducation. The people who are in power are the ones who are failing to stand up and challenge those who are raping us in broad daylight. Pardon my choice of words. I was once asked by one African, Ambassador, let's try to be nice to these Westerners. Let's not be too direct as we challenge them. And I did ask this brother of mine, I said, my brother, help me out. How do I tell a man who is raping me to rape me nicely? I said, help me with the language. And this was an educated professor who is advising me to be nice. How long am I going to continue to be nice? Those are the educated people who are sitting in the boardrooms and they choose to be mute. And when they are mute while representing us, that means 1.4 billion Africans are mute. It is not the villager who is sitting at the boardroom table. It is the elite, the educated. So my son, what is our education doing to us? What have we done to undo the colonial education? I hear right here in Ghana, perfect example. There's not a single Kwame Nkrumah book that is required reading in the Ghanaian educational system. Whose problem is that? Most African countries, our educational system is still the colonial educational system. So what do you expect from the leaders that we have today if their education remains colonized? So may I say, the most dangerous person for Africa today is a colonized African. And we must challenge each and every one of us to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. Are you colonized? Where do you stand when it comes to the issues to do with Africa? How do you feel about the continued exploitation of Africa? How do you feel about neocolonization, imperialism? Do you even understand it? Do you even know what the Berlin Conference means when it comes to your ability to buy bread, to your ability to get a job? Can you connect the dots back to the policies that are designed to keep us where they want us to be? It is the elite, it is the educated who are refusing to challenge the status quo and speak on our behalf, educated or not. So I'd like to answer your question by saying our miseducation is what is leading us to the Africa that we are today, an Africa that cannot stand up and defend our turf with facts, with our truths. Ours is a simple issue. You see, truths and facts, these are constants that never change. All we gotta do is stand up. I like to end by saying, some of you have seen a poster. There were black men who were bending over, and there was a table on their backs. And at the bottom, it simply said, and on top, of course, sitting around the table, were white people who were feasting. And the caption simply said, all we gotta do is stand up. Mm-hmm. Why have we failed to stand up?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
So what are we going to do about the educational curriculum? Because that's where it begins. They don't want us knowing our history. They don't want us knowing where we came from. Because if you are a person without a history, who are you? Where do you come from? As Africans, we are too busy running away from who we are. We don't want to embrace our Africanness. Why not? If you refuse and don't accept your Africanness, then who are you?
I'm a king, Yes,
But when I went to Ghana, I stayed at a beautiful hotel. When I walked into the room, right above the headboard was a humongous photograph of Queen Elizabeth. And I thought to myself, now I am going to go to bed tonight with the shadow of Queen Elizabeth hanging over me. What kind of dreams was I going to have that night? I nicely found time. I called my VP and I said, could you help me take this photograph down? We shall put it back tomorrow morning. Because tonight I intend to have good dreams. Why is it that in 2024 we still have the photograph of Queen Elizabeth hanging over the walls of hotels in Ghana, and not a single photograph of a king or a chief from Ghana? We know when it comes to West Africa, the document that African countries were made to sign as they attained their quote-unquote independence, the document that's labeled the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. On one hand, we are giving you your independence, but on the other hand, we want you to sign this document, agreeing to continue to be colonized. And if you choose not to sign this document, in my pocket, I have a gun that has your name. Guinea and Mali, they chose not to sign the document. That France moved into those countries, poured concrete into the sewage pipes, destroyed schools, hospitals, roads, anything that could be destroyed, they destroyed. Anything that they could pick up and take back with them to France, they took. They even took the last pencil. This was done as a way of letting the other African countries know that should you refuse to sign this document, this was the fate that awaited you. You have to give up 85% at that time of your bank reserves, deposit them with France. Those funds, once gone, they're not coming back. All your minerals discovered and yet to be discovered belong to France, and French companies had the first right of refusal. Your language of instruction shall be French. Your military can only be equipped by France. Your military can only be trained by France. You must give up control of your finances. You must give up control of your natural resources. You must give up control of your military. Now, if you stay away from those, you are free to run your country as you wish. What kind of a country are you running? What kind of a leader are you? To this day, those African countries are still required to deposit their bank reserves with France. Now, the numbers have gone down some. They're down to the 50, 55, 60. But by and large, with the exception of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali that said, France, pack your bags and go home. The rest of the African countries are still subjected and held to the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. But our leaders, for various reasons, and we know those who have tried to pull away, they've either been assassinated or exiled. So the realities are there, that if African leaders try to push back, there's some serious consequences. In spite of all that, there are some other issues that they also could deal with. We know the NGOs are nothing but wolf in sheep's clothing as they come into our countries. A lot of embassies as well. We have a few nice embassies. But we have many countries that are also just here to make sure that they continue to destabilize the countries. They make sure that the elections are forever interrupted. Why is it that we are all fully aware that the loans that are being given to African countries, the loans that have been given to African countries for centuries, are frivolous loans that have been paid 1,000,000 times over? Why is it that our ministers of finance every year, twice a year, they go to the World Bank? They know what's going on, but they say nothing. What is keeping us as Africans from coming together and speaking with one voice and letting the World Bank know and the IMF that we have paid for these loans a gazillion times over? We aren't paying for them no more. What are we afraid of? Why can't we just say it like it is? It is damn wrong. And it cannot continue. But we are afraid. You see, they defeated us where it matters the most. That even things that we have the ability to change, we are afraid of changing them. When the Europeans first came to Africa, they brought us religion. And then we went to church. And they taught us about a human being called Jesus Christ. And they talked about the angels, and they talked about who are in heaven, a place we all want to go to. They're beautiful, they're angelic, they're desirable. And oh, by the way, they're white. And oh, by the way, we are white, like the angels. But remember, in school, they told us this was white. But never mind how we look. We may look rather pinkish, but don't disregard that. We are white believers. Then they turned around and said there's something called hell. And there's a devil there. Ugly, undesirable, does all the horrible things, and that creature is black. And oh, by the way, you too are black. Never mind this black color that we told you in school. A blatant lie was told to us, and we have never stood up to say that's a damn lie. I'm not black. They're not white. You look like the devil because we told you so. We look like the angels because we told you so. So it is when a little 5-year-old black boy is given 2 sets of dolls, black dolls and white dolls. And he's asked which one is mean, he points at the black one. He's asked which one is ugly, he points at the black one. He's asked which one is nice, he points at the white one. Which one is beautiful? He points at the white one. And then when asked which one is more like you, he sheepishly points at the black one. The 5-year-old boy is defeated before his life even begins. Somehow, there are subliminal messages that this boy just knows it. Think about it. So that same little boy who grew up to be the Minister of Education, he's not going to like anything to do with him. So yes, European history is where it's at. African history? No. You, African educators, you don't read your own work in order to be tenured. Many professors, to be tenured, they got to write 10, 20, 30, 40 papers. And those papers can only be reviewed in Europe, in the United States, by credible universities. So I said to the professors, you don't trust each other? You are not credible? If you can't trust each other, why should we parents trust you with our children? To be tenured in universities in Africa, your work has to be reviewed outside Africa. What's wrong with having universities in North Africa send their work to Southern Africa? Universities in West Africa send their work to East Africa. But no, black professors are going to be reviewing it. It's not acceptable. They won't have the same weight. Stupidity has got to come to an end. It is filtering through to everything that we are doing. I am telling you, my brothers and sisters, we are the laughingstock of the world. The current US ambassador to the United Nations, and I'm going to call her out. She was fired by President Trump when I was going to Washington. She used to come to my office, and she would say, Ambassador, talk to the ambassadors. They need to speak up. When she was the former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, she said, Ambassador, I'll be sitting on this side with the American side, and there'll be the Africans over there. She said, if they could just say some obvious things that would help her come back and make decisions and recommend certain changes. But the Africans don't speak. Tell these ambassadors to speak up. Why are we afraid? Because we were defeated where it matters the most. The man. So no matter how hard we try to change our Africa, until we heal from the legacy of colonization, nothing we try to do is going to succeed. If we don't heal from the legacy of colonization, we will continue to be used as instruments of our own self-destruction. I challenged ECOWAS when they were trying to mobilize the military to go and fight Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Oh, we can have a coup. I said, help me understand something. France has had coups against these nations for centuries. When France is forcing these countries to deposit their bank reserves with France, that's a coup. President Tinubu, what have you done about this coup? You are sitting on the big boy chair now. Talk to me. What are you going to do about this coup? When France is making sure that all natural resources for these countries belong to France, that's a coup. What are you going to do about it, ECOWAS? But somehow, we don't see them as coups because it's the white men doing it. If a black man was doing the same thing to another black man, oh, you know, they'll call them out in a heartbeat. We have a serious problem as Africans. We don't even realize how sick we are with this disease. We are not just sick at home. We are not just sick in the doctor's waiting room. We are not just sick in the general ward in the hospital. We are in the intensive care. As a doctor, I cannot help you unless you come to me with your complaints. At least recognize that you're sick. But most of the time, we don't even realize that we are sick. This stupidity that is going on in Africa has got to come to an end. And you can't expect those who put us in positions of servitude to get us out. It's not going to happen. When is the African going to wake up? The African is stupid in Africa. The African is stupid in America. The African is stupid in South America. The African is stupid in the Caribbean. Wherever you see us as black people, we do some of the most stupid things. You go into neighborhoods. In America, where I've spent most of my time, look at the Mexicans. They stick together like super glue when it comes to issues pertaining to their existence in the United States as Mexicans. The Irish, the Jews, the Chinese, the Indians ask for their voices loud and clear because they understand the importance of unity. They don't have to love each other, but they understand when it comes to issues pertaining to their sheer existence, they must stick together like super glue. But when we ask for the voices of black people, we scatter like mice. We don't believe in each other. I was in Dallas and one Zimbabwean, I was asking, are there a lot of Zimbabweans who are you? No, I don't talk to Zimbabweans. I'm the only black person in my neighborhood, and she was so proud of it. I'm speaking to another friend, this time in Zimbabwe. She was so proud that her son cannot speak Shona, and that the son speaks English like a British. And she's telling me this with a certain level of pride. And that's the mother, which means the child is just as doomed. When are we going to wake up and realize that our inability to move forward as a people is because we were defeated where it matters the most? What are we going to do about the educational curriculum? Because that's where it begins. They don't want us knowing our history. They don't want us knowing where we came from. Because if you are a person without a history, who are you? Where do you come from? As Africans, we are too busy running away from who we are. We don't want to embrace our Africanness. Why not? If you refuse and don't accept your Africanness, then who are you? You can never speak English like an American. Then you don't want to speak your own vernacular. Then who are you? You are just like a ship without an anchor. The wind blows that way, there you go. The wind blows that way, there you go. And there are too many of us who find themselves in that boat without an anchor. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. If you care the least bit about our future, how else are we going to get France out of Africa? How else are we going to get Britain, Germany, all those former colonizers? They're now in as multinationals, siphoning billions out of Africa, using safe havens to hide their returns. We know they're here. They are now wolf in sheep's clothing. If you look at the move that Niger made, by simply saying, France, you can no longer buy our uranium for 80 cents a kilo, when we know very well you're selling it for 200 euros per kilo. Niger was realizing about 1 billion out of the sales of its uranium a year, while France was realizing close to 300 billion. That one move alone, when Niger said, if you want our uranium, 200 euros a kilo, please. Immediately, 300 billion, 1 minute. It's not going to take much to change Africa. We got what it takes. If there's one thing we're very fortunate of, we're endowed with everything the rest of the world needs. We don't need the world. The world needs Africa. But do we really know that and believe in it and are ready to stand up and proclaim who we are? And let them know. But I've sat in meetings where I've seen ministers, America, can you help us with this? Europe, can you help us? Begging endlessly for something that we have. Whatever they are giving you is what they stole from us. And they are giving you peanuts. When are we going to stop being outsmarted by these people? They come to give you aid. You know very well that's your money. But we're so grateful. It's the same thing they're doing at the United Nations. When Africa is supposed to be at the UN Security Council as the 6th and 7th members of the UN Security Council. But you can't have veto power. So come on in, Africa. Oh, we got a kiddie chair over here for you. Sit over there, we got some cookies. Sit over there and be quiet while we take care of business. And we entertain that. Why? What's wrong with us? What gives me hope is that we have a vibrant African youth who are saying enough is enough. We are not taking this anymore. This abuse has got to come to an end. The exploitation of the African continent has got to come to an end. As long as there's a country called Malawi, as long as there's a country called Gabon with 1.5 million people, as long as there's a country called Eswatini, Berlin Conference is alive and well. And that's where we get defeated internationally through trade. Oh, you're all equal. You are a sovereign nation, Eswatini. You are a sovereign nation, Togo. You are a sovereign nation, Malawi. So let's go to the market. You, Malawi, with your little basket with 3 eggs, you're coming to the market. And here comes China with truckloads of eggs. I once was told that Zimbabwe thought, well, let's see if we can sell eggs to China. Let's supply some eggs. They're bringing stuff to us. Let's give them eggs. So I told the president, ask people to go do some research and see how much eggs we need to send to China. The report came back and said, Mr. President, the amount of eggs we produce the whole year, that's one breakfast in China. So you want Zimbabwe to go to the market with China and sell eggs. As we speak today, we're all sick from the disease. None of us is exempt. And that's a fact. I'm going to ask each and every one of you to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. And ask yourself why you feel the way you do. Why are you automatically afraid of those who don't look like you? Why do you feel defeated? Why are you afraid to speak up and stand your ground? Besides, you are the mothers and fathers of humanity. Without the black woman, without the black man, the rest of the world would not be. That's a fact. We civilized the world. They came to Africa and stole everything that they never had. Came back with what they stole from us and made us believe that they gave it to us. But they want the history to start from here, so we don't talk about what happened before. My brothers and sisters, we are inheritors of an amazing continent. South Africa is an amazing country. We have people like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, our very own president. People who suffered and sacrificed everything for this country to be free. Why are we trying to disrespect them and go back? South Africa should lead the way. Nigeria should lead the way. Kenya should lead the way. We have countries that should lead the way because they have what it takes to take Africa where Africa needs to be. Leaders cannot do it alone. If we are not ready to implement those ideas and think he can do it as leadership alone, it's not going to work. I was discussing the issues of the quote-unquote coups in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. One African said, but Ambassador, why do we have to do coups to change government? Why can't we just do like the Chinese do? I said, son, let me ask you one question. During the pandemic, the Chinese built a 10,000 square foot hospital bed in 1 week. Are you Africans ready to do that? I said, son, until you start having the mind of a Chinaman, you can never be like a Chinaman. We have some serious introspection to do. We have some serious thinking to do. We're not asking you to love each other. We simply understand. We want you to understand that while there is a certain level of camaraderie that exists in other races, there was a strategy put in place to make sure that we remain divided and conquered. Fear was intentionally instilled in us, so we will be forever fearful for nothing, but we're just afraid. Is South Africa ready? Is South Africa ready to lead the way? To stand up and say enough is enough? That we can no longer continue to be exploited. We can no longer continue to be treated as second-class citizens in our own land. The future is bright. If only we could understand that the power is in our hands. We have a bigger role to play as citizens. Let's believe in ourselves. Let's stand up for what's right. Let's let the world know that we are the inheritors of the most amazing continent. But they can no longer continue to allow our resources, our inheritance, to fund the educational systems in their countries, to fund the healthcare systems in their countries, to fund the infrastructure development in their countries, while we are languishing in poverty. And they have the audacity to tell us that we're poor people. How dare they? Former President Jomo Kenyatta, he said when missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. When we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bible. Marcus Garvey, he said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Patrice Lumumba said, the day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. It will be a history of glory and dignity. The time is now. There is no turning back. Africa, wake up. We're simply asking that the world treats us the same way they would want to be treated. We are demanding a world that is just, a world that is fair, a world that is free of bigotry and hate. We're not asking the world to do anything that they would not want done unto them. I need each and every one of you, after you've had a serious conversation with the image in the mirror, to stand up on top of the tallest mountain, look in the mirror, and tell the world that we are the proud, the beautiful, the intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible Africans.
I'm a kingo, yes, I'm a kingo. I'm a kingo.